One of the most puzzling parts of the Trump assassination attempt investigation has been, what were those two local snipers doing who had Overwatch responsibility for the roof that Crooks was found dead on at the end? Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Chris Martenson. I'm here with Peak Prosperity, and we're here with a citizen's investigation, one of many. And today we're talking about the inexplicable actions of the local counter snipers. I think this is the linchpin. I think this is the nexus. We have to understand this. This is where everything went wrong, and I'm going to make that case today. So let's start here. Remember, the shots rang out. The first shots fired at 6:11:33. Okay, and so at 6:13 and 23. Oh, 1 second. I have to get didn't have my side monitor on, so I can't see what you're seeing. Now I can. Okay. So at 6:13:23, Greg Nickel appears for the first time, and let's play this. Now, here's what's bizarre to me about this. He's supposed to have been in the Overwatch position, but he wasn't apparently, but maybe he was. And then he comes out. And he comes out looking like a guy who's coming out of a 7-Eleven. You can imagine a slushie in his hand, maybe a hot dog. He's looking for his car, just seeing what's going on. He just walks off. Okay, this is why this is bizarre to me. First, he must know that at a minimum, he screwed up royally, right? So my first instinct, if I'm Greg, and I happen to be in that building right there that he walked out of, which is the very one that Crooks is found dead on the roof on, is the one we hear what appears to be 8 shots coming from the roof of. That's a racket, okay? If you're down in the building and you hear 8 shots going off over your head, oh no, right? I'm going to be like, sphincter moment, and run back to my post and look out the window, and then I'm going to radio into everybody, oh yeah, subject's down here on the south end of the AGR complex on the roof. That would be a normal behavior. Instead, Greg waits 1 minute and 50 interminable seconds after those shots are fired, and then he just wanders out. He doesn't come out not knowing if there's more shooters out there, or is he walking into a war zone? He's walking out like a guy who's positive the action is over. I don't know how he knows that. I'm sure he has a radio, and the radio has said, shooter down. But how does anybody know there isn't 2 shooters, right? It's just an inexplicable thing. How do you know that the guy who's dead on the roof does not have a partner or partners? You wouldn't. You would not know that. So it's just weird to me as we watch Greg, just sort of saunter out of this building. His gun's at the low. He's not coming out looking. He doesn't look particularly observant. He doesn't look like he's like, oh, hey, what, he doesn't look up where the shooting came from, which would be my normal instinct, find out where I am, what's going on. He just sort of wanders off. Okay, that's a little odd. And I don't know how to account for that. Because for 1 minute and 50 seconds, he must be in there. And I've watched this tape very, very, very carefully. I can't see him peeking out the windows, He's just in the building and then just opens the door and saunters on out. I find that odd. Now, equally odd, it's just a little bit later here. Now we're at 6:14 and 56, so we'll call that 6:15 or ish. And you're going to watch Greg go up and try and open the door to get back in, but it's a self-locker. And then this uniformed officer over here, he comes up, gives it a pretty good hard tug. Now, at my site, somebody mentioned, I'm so sorry, I forgot who mentioned this, but it's a great observation, which is sometimes those self-locking doors tend to wear out over time. This whole facility feels a little worn down to me. There's even an old TV antenna, the old style kind this is old. So sometimes when they wear out over time, if you give them a good hard jerk, you can defeat its locking mechanism. So maybe that's what happened. So let's watch what goes on here. But first, Greg Nickel walks up, and he's going to try the door. You'll see the door. Yeah. He tries both sides. There's 2 handles. It didn't work, but he just gave him kind of like those little shaky tugs. And then we're going to see this other officer walk over here, and he's the guy who's going to tug it pretty good, and it opens. And what's going to be fascinating is Greg is going to have wandered all the way back over to here, and when this guy opens it, here comes Greg running. Hey, hold on, guys. Hold on. Wait, whoa. I want to be in first. So he's first back in for some reason. Now, I've seen that. Where have I seen that behavior before? Oh, that's right. I'm a father. When my kids were young and you would ask them, hey, did you clean your room? And they'd say, yeah. And then you'd start walking towards the room. They would beat you to the room and get in there and close the door, maybe, finish the cleaning job. I mean, it's just, I'm getting guilty vibes off of this, and I don't know why. I mean, there could be lots of so-called innocent reasons for him being a little guilty, which is like maybe he comprehensively effed up at his job, and he's just, in, some sort of panic mode to figure out how he's going to cover that up. I don't know, but there's something off about this. So let's keep going to see what we can find. Now, fascinatingly, there was congressional testimony by the state police. I think it was a Colonel Paris. He was a lieutenant colonel. Can't remember. Anyway, this guy Paris says, hey, those two sniper guys who were in charge of that Overwatch building that had a perfect view of the roof line that Crooks ultimately is suspected of taking those 8 shots from. And I'm saying suspected because I still don't know. Was that gun fired? Do the casings match? Was there residue on Crooks' hand? None of that's been released. Normal, ordinary, basic, usual stuff has not yet been released to us. So we're going to have to use words like allegedly and suspected until it's confirmed. For now, the idea that Crooks took all 8 shots with that weapon from that spot is in what I call yellow evidence territory. It'll become data once we actually get some actual confirmation that it's true. Weird that we're at this point. So let's listen. And this is the district attorney for Butler County, Richard Goldinger. Here's what he says about that same testimony.
The Pennsylvania State Police Colonel, he testified yesterday and said that they left.
Right. He's wrong.
He's wrong about that.
He's wrong about that.
Because he said that when they spotted him, that they left to go look for him, and that's why the roof wasn't covered.
No, that's not true. They stayed where they were. They could not see where he was located when he was on the roof. Their vantage point was they would literally had to have been leaning out the window looking over to where he was located. But they were still where they were supposed to be. And they couldn't find him. He had walked around the building and they had called it in. So they didn't leave their posts. I don't know why he said that, but
I mean, that was a pretty serious thing to say to Congress.
Well, yeah, it was. And I'm not saying he wasn't telling it. I mean, maybe he was told that and that's what he believes happened, but that's not what happened. They did not leave. They just couldn't see where he was from where they were. The vantage point did not permit them to see where he was shooting from.
Okay, a lot of problems with this. First, we know for a fact that Greg left his post because he wandered out of that building a minute 50 seconds later. If you are the snipers in charge of a spot, you don't just wander off of that because something happened and there's more action and you got to wander outside. So we know he left his post. We know he did. Minute 50 seconds at the latest, he's outside that door and he's not at his post. So did somebody tell him it was okay to wander out? Like, did they need another guy wandering around with a weapon drawn? I mean, it's hard to imagine under what circumstance you would actually walk off of your sniper post where you had perfect oversight of that roof line to come down and open a door and ultimately get yourself locked out of the building you desperately want to get back into. It's all a little fishy. I think Richard Goldinger has the story wrong. He might have been fed a load of crap, and he's going to have to backtrack on that, and here's why. This is the FPOTUS. This is an after-action. Beaver County put together its own after-action report that came out shortly afterwards. This is from the Grassley materials you'll see down there. Charles Grassley had put all this in there. It's blacked out, so I don't know who's under those black name, the redacted portions. We'd love to know, but we can figure it out from here. And actually, we've been able to piece it together anyway because they didn't black out enough, as I'll show you in just a second. So at 6 o'clock, they said, 1800, that's 6 o'clock, blank said to blank, unsure of direction of travel. So we know from other texts we have that short piece of black right there, cover-up tape, that is nickel, said to somebody else, unsure of the direction of travel. Suspect at 1805, 605, approximate suspect at picnic tables. Okay, that was on the north and west side of the whole complex. That's the picnic table. And moving direction of sheets. Now, that was Nichols saying that. Has backpack, communicated by nickel. That's going to be nickel. So that size of little black piece of tape is nickel. When you see that length, that when you're doing this blackout stuff, you got to be careful because sometimes the blackout length gives you some clues. So that's nickel. And then under that, Butler sniper stayed in place at original position. Now, this is important because Greg Nickel is Beaver County. The Butler sniper stayed in place at the original position. But at 1805, this implies that the Beaver sniper did not stay in place at the original position. This is from their own Beaver County after action report, and Greg is a sniper with Beaver County. Okay, so this is their own official, like, they don't just sort of make stuff up. Oh, dude, assassination attempt on the president. Let's just be vague and sloppy. You know, they're going to do everything they can to be accurate without giving too much away, right? That's how the CYA has already begun. And then look at this, 1806, 606 to 612. That little short black piece of tape, which we think corresponds well with Nickel, goes downstairs to Building 1 to meet patrol to let them know suspect is around building on site of Fairgrounds. Now, it's important to note they numbered the buildings the way they wanted to. We're calling it Building 6. What we call Building 6, they have marked clearly on their maps as Building 1. And on their maps, they were in Building 2. Okay, that's the two-story building adjacent and connected, sort of, through a causeway, a breezeway, to what they're calling Building 1. So I hate that we have to call it, is it Building 1, Building 6? Same thing. Okay, so Nickel goes downstairs at 8:06. At 8:06, he goes downstairs. So remember, here's the timeline. They've been planning for weeks. They have all these pre-meetings. They show up at the site at 11 o'clock this day, 11 o'clock in the morning. They're getting prepped. They're doing everything. They're communicating. They're getting it all set up. The crowds start arriving. At 6:03, Trump goes on the stage. At 6:06, Greg Nickel's like, you know what would be a good idea? If I left my post. Nobody leaves their post. So the line of questioning here for those who are investigating, who have the authority to ask this sort of a question, need to understand, Greg, why did you abandon your post? Because that's what it's called if you leave your post without permission. If you didn't abandon your post, who gave you permission to leave your post? And then we take that person, if he got permission, and we start asking them some questions because we got questions. Okay, so, but 1806 to 1812, Nickel goes downstairs of Building 1 to meet patrol to let them know suspect is around building on site of Fairgrounds. Now, why do you have to go downstairs to meet patrol? Don't you have this thing called a radio? Hello? How's this thing work? Right? Yeah. So, I've got a suspect, long hair, glasses about 20, gray shirt, tan khaki pants, light colored khaki pants. Yeah, west side of Building 2, right? If you're using their terminology, 2. All right. And then they note here somewhere in there, one marked vehicle and an unmarked vehicle pull in together. Now, we've seen that. Fortunately, we have that. One of those, the marked vehicle has got a dash cam, and we've been analyzing that dash cam. In fact, when you just saw Greg come out of the building and then race back in, that's from the dash cam from that marked vehicle that wheeled in, came in at 1809. And within 2 minutes, that one unmarked patrol guy had managed to find crooks on the roof when all these other people were leaving posts and spinning around and not doing stuff. There's something very wrong with this story, and you know it, okay? So carrying on, this is fascinating to me. August 9th, United States Senate, this is from Grassley, via electronic transmission to Mr. Ronald Rowe, the acting director of the U.S. Secret Service, says, Dear Acting Director Rowe, on July 30th, 2024. So July 30th, okay? So that's 2 full weeks in a few days after the shooting. You testified before a joint Senate committee on the Judiciary and Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs hearing, examining the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump on July 13th, 2024. During the hearing, you presented a picture not previously provided to Congress from the second floor of the AGR building and stated, quote, within a quote, this point of view is the point of view where the counter sniper team locally was posted. The gold arrow indicates where the shooter fired from. Looking left, why was the assailant not seen? When we were told that the building was going to be covered. So they told us. We asked them. They said, oh, yeah, that building's covered. That there had been a face-to-face that afternoon. The other team disputes that our team leads met. This was the view. So Secret Service is recently as July 30th is saying, look, we met with these guys. We met with them again. Our team leads met. They told us they were going to cover this building. And now we have the local people saying, we never met, and they never told us to cover that building roof. Obviously, if you're in charge of this building, though, dudes, local guys, covering that roof is clearly, obviously, retardedly your job. Okay? So somebody's not being real honest with something here, and I don't like that because I can smell BS quickly, and it's going on. But at any rate, you can see here, Grassley's a little confused. He's like, hey, I see you're throwing the local guys under the bus. You give us a picture. You take a picture out of that window, one of the windows that they were covering, and you said, yeah, look, the shooter would have been right there, which is an obvious point. It's a fair point. Honestly, if the Secret Service thought these guys had this roof in the bag and they told them to have this roof in the bag and they had met with them, and then these guys did not have the roof in the bag, that's a problem, okay? That's why so much hinges on this part for this investigation, because this is where the failure happened. Now, carrying on from that same Grassley letter to Acting Director Rowe, this is just page 2 of 6, he says here, quote, as part of my ongoing investigation into the attempted assassination, my investigative staff communicated with local law enforcement to include counter snipers who were on site that day. So they talked with the counter snipers. Good move. Local law enforcement dispute the angle of the picture that you provided during your testimony. Yeah, that's a bad angle, man. So what is this? Some kind of aging starlet in Hollywood saying, you got my bad side, dude. Bad angle. Anyway, stating the picture you provided neither accurately depicts their line of sight and coverage area from their position in the building, nor their physical placement within the building. Yeah, we weren't even there, dude. Local law enforcement assert their true physical location was the following. And they said, oh, look, they circled these 2 little windows over here. But, here's the error. I love errors. Because now we know that the Beaver sniper is nickel. No black tape over that one. You see that? Gotcha. Good. Okay, Butler sniper is somebody else who we still don't know for some reason. That person has been just woefully missing from every single... I've been trying hard. I still don't know who that is. So if you know, let me know. And of course, this back here is the AC unit that Crooks was seen to climb up on. This is the whole roof line that we now have multiple camera angles of him running across. I think here's where he threw his backpack, whee, clunk, and then climbed up, clunk, put his backpack back on, continued running, dropped out of view, came back up, and then was over here. And then, of course, he came back to this point right about here as his back is turned to the viewers from over here under this tree. And he turns his back over. And then he's doing something, we assume, reassembling his rifle, which was taken apart and put into his backpack in 2 pieces. Okay, but gotcha. Beaver sniper is now nickel. Okay, now we can orient on this story. By the way, page 3 of 6 of the Grassley letter to Directing Rowe, these were some pictures that were provided. We've had them for quite a while, but I'm going to bring them back because they're relevant to this story. Okay. So here we have this, I don't know what this thing is. It's got a scope on it, right? It's obviously got a collapsible stock and a pistol grip 4 stock here. And then I don't know what the rest, I think one guess is this is a really bizarre, very weird, suppressed thing. It could be a short suppressed rifle, but that's not a typical sniper rifle. That's kind of a really close quarter. I mean, if you only thought you were shooting out, I don't know, 100 yards maybe, but that's not typical sniper range. Alternatively, it's a true sniper rifle that they haven't installed the barrel in, because if they did, then the barrel's sticking out the window, and even though the window's open, and then they can't like get close to the window, and if they're all the way back because their barrel's on there, now you can't see so much because, you know, you got to get up closer to be able to see a little more. I don't know. But they showed these 2 pictures. This is 2nd floor west window, and this is the 1st floor on the south. It's on the south, but it's on the west side of the building. That's why I called it southwest window. So here, let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, from a region, from KDKA, CBS News Pittsburgh, they were reviewing all of this, and you can see here, they said the local tactical snipers, this was their duty area here, as they put it. This is that 2nd story west window we just talked about, and I believe this is going to be the 1st story window. So I'm pretty sure they were in this room right here, which has these 3 windows here, and then they were in this one, but as we'll see, they were actually in other rooms, and this is where the story really begins to fall apart for the locals, or for Secret Service, somebody. So I find it not even remotely plausible that Secret Service did not debrief the locals even as late as more than 3 weeks later, carrying on with the Grassley letter to Director Rowe, acting Director Rowe. He says here, as of August 9th, 2024, this is just astonishing to me. ESU have told my staff that Secret Service had not met with them to debrief the events of July 13th. What are you talking about, Willis? This is crazy. Really. So July 13th to the July 20th to the 27th. Now we get up to, it's almost a month later. It's just a little over 3 weeks, closing in on 4. And they haven't talked to him yet. Here's the thing with incidents like this, you got to talk to people immediately because things get vague. They start misremembering. They start sharing stories. They can't remember their story. It's just part of being human. Is that after an event happens, you got to get the testimony from people as soon as possible, ASAP. Carrying on, Grassley said this type of meeting should be standard, even more so before you are sworn in and provide testimony to Congress. Even more so, before you come here and tell us lots of things, it would be good if you knew those things because you had done your job. It's very polite the way Grassley's putting this. He's a man of decorum. This type of meeting should be standard, even more so before you're sworn in and provide testimony to Congress. Grassley reminds me of my grandfather. My grandfather was a man of substance and character like that. He was a banker in upstate New York, a regional banker, president of the whole thing. And he said there was this time when an old college roommate came up and knocked on his door, and he didn't really like the guy. And so the guy knocks on the door and says, "Arthur, surprise, and are you glad to see me?" And my grandfather said, "I am both pleased and surprised, but just a little bit more surprised than pleased." That's the kind of burn you get right there. That's a Grassley. I think Grassley and my grandpa would have got along fine. This type of meeting should be standard. Even more so, Reginald or Ronald Rowe, before you were sworn in and provide testimony. Okay, unfortunately, this further points to the communication issues that are in part to blame for that day that seemingly continue to plague the Secret Service. So that's implausible to me that they're just like, oh yeah, 3 weeks, 4 weeks late, whatever. We haven't really gotten around to talking to them yet about the largest failure in 4 decades since Ronald Reagan was shot. Like, worst failure in our organization's history. We just thought, why not be lackadaisical about that? It's just implausible. Okay. And then, moreover, writes Charles Grassley, on August 8th, 2024, additional body cam footage and audio were released, which show a Butler Township police officer stating, "I effing told them they needed to post the guys effing over there. I told them that." The Secret Service, "I told them that effing Tuesday. I told them to post effing guys over here." So we've reviewed that tape before, and the guy's worked up, and it's just in the moments after the shooting, and he's mad, and he should be mad. It's just like such a colossal failure. Like, how do we not have a guy on that roof, right? Grassley writes, quote, "Were you aware of this body camera's footage before your July 30th congressional testimony? If not, why not? If so, did you review it in advance of your testimony regarding the reported statement from the Butler Township officer? Describe in detail, please, the Tuesday meeting that occurred with Secret Service. In addition, list all local, state, and federal personnel meeting present at that meeting. Provide all records and precisely answer whether the statement from the Butler Township officer is accurate representation of events." There shouldn't be this much confusion over any of this stuff. And of course, it's completely implausible. So let's have our word definition of the day. Plausible, adjective. Having an appearance of truth or reason, seemingly worthy of approval or acceptance. Credible, believable. A plausible excuse, a plausible plot. Yeah, it has to be credible, has to be believable. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. I don't believe any of it. This is a good old-fashioned cover-up, and we're in the thick of it, and that's why we keep doing what we're doing. Now, I have to talk about all of this back at Peak Prosperity with my subscribers. Again, we're going to be talking about, this is all part and parcel of something I'm calling the Great Rebalancing, right? And the true battles right now are being fought with ideas. if once you lose the idea war, then that thing in yellow, that's what comes next. When I talk about the battlefield, the most important battles are fought before those things start flying around down there in yellow. So we have to do everything we can, and part of that is why I spend so much time on the Trump investigation, because if we let this go, if we just sort of let this recede off, we've lost the idea that we have a right to the truth. We've lost the idea that we can demand plausible, accountable actions from our leaders. If we don't, we just admit, oh, it's old feudal times and the king can do whatever he wants, like prima nocte every time Ronald Rowe, gives testimony. Bend over, folks. It's awful. And so that's why we have to fight what we fight. We say, no, this is how we win. We say, time out. No. You can't get away with complete BS. Sorry, not going to fly. And it's our right to be able to say that. And that's what has to happen, is we have to reclaim our rights as people, as citizens. And so that's why I do what I do. Now, I would invite you to join Peak Prosperity. Here's your testimony of the day. Just came in from Cut Off the L. But Larry the Logger, he's been with me a while. He says, quote, look at this. I'm some doofus retired in Oklahoma. Larry's no doofus. Great guy. Who, because I found Chris during the housing crisis in '08, I've been at this a while, watched several times the long version of the Crash Course, which everybody should do, and found a source of news, real truth-seeking. Fast forward, I have front row seats watching the results of so much hard work, so much talent creating the pathway to the truth about a very important and critical event. I get to watch it unfold before the rest of the world hopefully finds out, and that right soon. I wish I could do more than watch from a distance and be helpful, but I don't have the chops, and that's okay. I get to be here to watch and learn and then take action, and I can when the flood of information becomes common knowledge, and Team Moloch has to go. Sorry for the cavity-producing rant. Oh, it's totally awesome, Larry. Thank you. But I am grateful I watched that first Crash Course video in 2008. And thanks, Chris. What I can do and do often is pray for you and for Evie and the amazing people who do have the chops to investigate and find the truth. Like R.E.K. said, it's all I'm looking for. John, 1837. Kick A, brother. Thank you. All right. That's why I do what I do. That we're in this together. If you don't know, like there's a real battle going on now. And when I talk about the great rebalancing, this is a spiritual battle at some level. It's one of the oldest stories in the book, which is that sometimes people lose the plot line and they go a little crazy. And the way we get our way back to sanity is by gathering our wits again, coming out of that collective unconscious craziness. I mean, you're surrounded by crazy people. I don't have to tell you that. You know that. The way you uncrazy that is you surround yourself with the uncrazy people, and that's what I've assembled over at Peak Prosperity. And it looks like this. Here's some more uncraziness. Let's continue with this story for now. Okay, so this is where it all gets a little bizarre, because this is, again, it's so implausible what we're being asked to believe that I'm just going to reject it out of hand. Now, Greg Smith, who you know is the guy who was wearing the bright red Trump hat with the hair sticking out the top and gave the BBC interview, his wife was there recording. And she recorded this really, really important video just moments before the shooting. You can see there's two uniformed police officers over there. They're looking for somebody. Possibly one of them was the one who radioed at 6:06 that there's a guy on the roof, wearing white shorts. There's a guy in gray shirt there and a white hat and light-colored pants pointing stuff out. You see all these people wandering around. Like, nobody's listening to Trump, who's way over there, right? They're all over here looking at something. There's that much action going on. So that's important, because there's two things we can pull from that video that are really critical. The first is that these windows are all open. You have to squint a little here, but trust me, I've zoomed in, and I hope you can see what I see here. That little light thing right there is that window frame is open, and so the sun is just right. It's just nicking the top corner of that window frame. So that's what that is. And then if you look carefully, you can see this window frame is out as well. And then this one also is nicking the light a tiny bit. This one, I think, is in the shadow. You can see the sun is hitting this vent stack. So this one's in the dark. I don't believe this window is open. But as well, when we advance a tiny bit, we see in the film, we see this is that west window, second floor. That has that Funkadoo. Is that a sniper rifle? Is that like a camo draped spotting scope? I don't know, right? But that's would have been poking out of this window, which we see is open. And here again, we can see this window, which is the same as this window, is open. And here's the guy who's been pointing out, and here's a uniformed police officer. So again, here's what we can note about these windows. So this is from the Grassley materials. This is a picture that was taken from inside that sniper room. This is that second story window. We know that it's the west window because of this tree and because of the aspect. We can figure that out. Now I had windows like this in my life, right? They've got two latches here. You flip them up. That unlocks the window. You crank the crank, and the window swings open like that, okay? As well, it has a screen on it, which we can easily see the screen frame here, and this is the kind of screen that's activated by these two little flippy tabs, which, if you've ever had them, they're a little frustrating and crappy, but they sort of work. But it's like you flick them up, and then the window comes out. So to get the screen out would not be a huge problem. I mean, if you're really worried about it, and time was of the essence, and you're a tactical sniper kind of person, I trust you have a knife, and you just and poke your head right out the screen. But otherwise, they do come out pretty easily. Alternatively, just punch it. As a kid, once upon a time, I can tell you, punching through screens can happen. Carrying on, this is from the after-action report, the redacted report. This is what they were giving us. So at 17:10, that's 5:10 in the afternoon, from their after-action report, they report that the Beaver County sniper is here. So that would be Greg, we now know. And the suspect was first spotted right here, and that's where they took the picture out of the window, and you see the crooks looking over his shoulder like that. And then they have this green triangle, which is the Butler County sniper. Again, we don't know who this is yet. Now, here's where it gets interesting. In the Grassley report again, this is from the letter to Acting Director Ronald Rowe. He wrote here, this is from Grassley, quote, "As part of my ongoing investigation into the attempted assassination, my investigative staff communicated with the local law enforcement to include the counter snipers," which he said. And before, I've read that part. And they said, "Local law enforcement dispute the angle of your picture. Terrible. You got my bad side. That you provided your testimony within the building. Quote, in yellow, local law enforcement assert their true physical location was the following." And then this picture was right below that. I've inverted them in things, so it just fits in this frame. But this picture is right below these words. And here again, we see Beaver Sniper is Nickel. Butler Sniper has a longer name than Nickel. And they're asserting, oh, we were only here. I have a problem with that. And the problem I have with that is that we can clearly see that these windows are also open. So one of the things that you will hear is just axiomatic, never fail, can't be anything but true, is that you do not have open windows ever near where the president or former president or possible future president are going to be. Any protectee that you care about, you're not going to have open windows 130, 40 yards away, maybe 150 by the back time we get to the, you're just not, it's not going to be, it's not a thing. And even if the sniper was in that room and they opened the window so they could see better, well, they shouldn't do that. They should be up on the roof, because when you open the window, think about what could happen. You've set up a big rifle, you've got your spotting scope, everything's good. You're in there, you've got that window covered. First, you can't see shit because the window doesn't give you full range of view. And second of all, what if somebody, a baddie, decided to come in and pew pew shoot both of you? Now they are, maybe with a suppressed weapon, and now you've just given them the keys to the kingdom. They have a completely secure, open spot there where they can take all the time in the world and do whatever they wanted to do at that point. So it's just not a thing to be having open windows. If you have to have them, maybe, but there's going to be really, really good, solid communication channel to make sure that that person is still a person who's still in that room, coded call signs and secret passwords or whatever, and constant communication. At any rate, now we're supposed to believe that not only did they have 4 windows open with only 2 guys up there, not only were they somehow mysteriously only perched down at this end, but they opened these windows and just left them open, but that at the critical moment from 6:06 to 6:12, Greg, Beaver Sniper, Nickel, had left one guy, one Butler Sniper, in charge of all of these windows and everything. It's implausible. It just doesn't make sense. And then at 6:05, okay. Sorry. didn't finish typing that sentence. Ignore that. This Elgins. This aligns. Anyway, this aligns with what Greg's earlier testimony. So it's possible that Greg is the person who noted the suspect at the table at 6:05 and said that the direction of travel of the suspect is towards Sheets. It's true. Sheets is over here-ish, up here-ish. But obviously the direction of the travel of the suspect was to the place he was going to climb on the roof. So that means Greg, in order to see that, would have had to wander to this side of the building and was looking out of one of these windows and saw him there. He was noted him, was alarmed enough about this guy that he tracked him to here and then lost sight of him. But this should have been a very clear, easy communication. Suspect is on the west side of the AGR complex, headed north. That's it. That's all you need to say. I'm not sure why say it headed to Sheets, because that's going to misdirect everybody to think, oh, let me go look at the gas station. It doesn't, that's an odd way to put it, but okay, people make mistakes. I get it. And then here, at 6:06 to 6:11, remember, Butler County's DA, Richard Goldinger, said, oh no, they were both at their posts. They just couldn't see anything, right? Well, on their own after-action report here, they note that from 6:06 to 6:11, they say here, the BCECU sniper went down here, uniformed patrol meets. Like, oh, and they told us that earlier, that Greg went down to meet with uniformed patrol. Now, the problem with this is we know that uniformed patrol wasn't there at 6:06. They wheel in at 6:09. So unless there's some earlier meeting we don't know about, we know that at 6:09 is the first time that uniformed patrol wheeled up, and they must be talking about somebody other than dash cam guy, because this just doesn't fit at all. I don't know what this means. So which uniform patrol did he meet up with, and what did they say, and what did they talk about? But here we have Greg clearly on their own after-action report, Goldinger, leaving his post. Who told him he could leave his post? What was so important that he had to say it face-to-face down here? Remember, 6:03, Trump comes on. 6:06, Greg's like, I gotta go. I guess the only way I could communicate with a uniformed patrol officer would be to walk down there and talk to him. I don't have any other devices. There's no other mechanism I can think of here to communicate what I need to communicate. That's bizarre. And they leave the Butler County sniper up here. So who was that? Now, the Washington Post is doing an incredible job here trying. They say they got, this is a whole article, you should probably read it, it's down there. It came out on the 3rd of August. But they said that they had transcripts of all the radio communications among the local cops. So that would be a gold mine, obviously. And the WAPO decides to, as usual, spin it all into this thing, which is kind of like, oh, it's such a confusing moment. Things just got lost in the tale. This is really sloppy reporting. This is deep state reporting, by the way, my friends. This is the Washington Post attempting to make it just sound like they did their best, but somehow somebody slipped through the cracks on this whole thing. So, here from this article, quote, at 6:02 p.m., the same local sniper who first radioed in the message about the rangefinder was on the second floor of the building owned by AGR International. From a northwest window facing away from the rally site, he glimpsed, this would be the northwest window right here on this side, just as speculated, he glimpsed the suspect again just as Trump was preparing to take the podium. So now this has changed. This is now at 6:02. This changes the story entirely, because at 6:05, like they're indicating here on their after-action report, Trump has already been on the stage for 3 minutes. This is one thing. If Greg is over here abandoning his post, at least at a minimum, leaving to go see where the suspect is, here in the Washington Post, you can see the story. They're starting to get the story tightened up a little, getting it tight. That's why Secret Service, just as a pro tip, you want to interview these guys immediately afterwards, not a month later. Okay, just pro tip for y'all. But here now they're saying at 6:02, and just as the Trump is preparing to take the podium, so he's going to get on the stage 1 minute later, quote, all right, subject is in between the AGR building. He has a backpack, says Sergeant Greg Nickel, a Beaver County sniper. Nickel has been assigned to look out over the rally site from a window on the opposite side of the building. But he had moved to look for the suspect, according to young Nickel's commander. Okay. Carrying on, Nickel did not respond to requests for comment, but in an interview, Beaver County District Attorney Nathan Bible, different from the guy we just saw, whose office oversees the county's tactical team, so that settles a question I just had. So Richard Goldinger is going to be the Butler County, and Nathan Bible is going to be the Beaver County. And so Nickel flows up through Beaver County. So Nathan's going to be the guy running interference for him. He praised Nickel for moving within the building to look for crooks, calling it good old-fashioned police work. He realized somebody needs to find the guy, Bible told the Post. From his vantage point on the second floor, Nickel was unable to discern where Crooks was headed, though the transcript shows. Crooks was walking to the northeast toward an area between two wings of the complex of warehouses. That's important. That's what you should say. Last seen, headed into the cubby, an alcove between two wings of the complex of warehouses. The space was enclosed on three sides. We call that a box canyon, a cul-de-sac, right? But Nickel suggested Crooks was headed in the direction of a gas station on the other side of the building. He just went towards the sheets. Nickel said, referring to the gas station a quarter mile away. That information quickly circulated, the transcript shows. Well, we're having to just swallow like Whopper after Whopper here. Carrying on, the Post says, he's reportedly between the buildings up here at AGR somewhere. A local officer on the channel, so this is correct information, said at 6:06. Now, this is exactly when we found out from the FBI's abate in testimony at Congress that they have a local security cam from a local establishment that sees Crooks getting on the roof at 6:06. So, this is from an officer on the east side, because he says, I'm guessing the west side because east side looks clear. So we know he's on the west side. We know he's over there. We know that we have law enforcement over there. We have uniformed officers. We've got at least two plainclothes or undercover, depending on what they are, officers over there. We've got assets on that west side, but somehow this amazing commando ninja kid completely evaded all of that. We have questions. So someone's on the roof, a local radio officer radioed at 6:08 p.m. I have someone on the roof with white shorts, and then that's that, right? And they said, we do not have assets on the roof. So they know there's somebody on the roof, and it's not them, right? And that's at 6:08. Now, it's still 3.5 long minutes after 6:08 before the first shots are fired. That's since a forever amount of time. And remember, we're supposed to believe that the local officer who found him was a guy who was patrolling 5 minutes away, heard something, drove up, wheeled right in, and within 2 minutes had found a kid on the roof with a rifle. So the question becomes, what exactly was happening in that Overwatch building where you have that perfect view? Perfect view. Anybody looking out any one of those open windows? Let's get them back, because this is just astonishing to me, right? Any one of these open windows right here. All you have to do, you don't even have to take the screen out. You can just press your face up against the screen and go, oh, yeah, there he is, right? It's totally viewable because it's not to the side. It's in front and to the side. Like, you look out any one of those windows and you can see that you could see him. And nobody did. How is this even possible? 3 minutes, 3+ minutes. We know there's somebody on the roof. We know we're looking for somebody. We're alarmed enough that we've left our post to go communicate about this guy. And then the shooting happens. And 2 more minutes after that, Greg Nickel finally wanders out of the building, looking fairly unconcerned. So now, to round out this story, it's now much later, 1959. We're coming on 20 hours, right, which is 8 o'clock. So the shooting happened at 6:11. For some reason, by 8 o'clock, it's all over. And this gentleman who's sitting on this table right here wandered out of that door just about a minute earlier. And now we're going to watch who comes out of this building at 8 o'clock, pretty much on the dot. Here's this guy. He's smiling at somebody. Pretty cash, hat backwards. He's communicating with somebody. He's got a cell phone in his hand. He's sort of playing around with that. Got this guy coming to frame right here. He was just meeting with a Secret Service guy earlier. The African-American guy with the rust-colored pants. He was just that guy who just wandered in and was meeting with him. And, oh, here we go. I guess the shift's over. It is time to leave. So, is that one of the other counter snipers? Is it one of these guys? I don't think so. They're just all plain clothes. They've all skivvied out and dressed up. Here's a K9 unit. Oh, there's Greg Nickel right there. And look what he is carrying. You see that? And look at this guy now. He knows Greg. They're communicating. They're chummy. Yeah, they talk to each other. and off they go. So let's look at this real quick. So I'm wondering if one of these people is Sniper 2, and I'm wondering if it's one of those guys walking out right now, or if it doesn't happen to be that guy sitting on the table. And the reason for that is because, well, first we noticed that Greg, he doesn't have that he's not carrying that goofy little short rifle we saw. That, my friends, that is a proper long sniper rifle. Big old beefy beautiful scope. It's got, looks like a suppression can on the front, and it's got a couple of folding tripod legs for the front, so you can set that on your little tripod, bing, and shoot. It's not this thing over here. That ain't it. This is totally different. So they must have had this longer weapon up there because he's carrying it down now. He's got something else in his left hand. I don't know what that is, but it's something in a little soft case. Can't tell what it is. But this guy, is this Sniper 2 from Butler? Because first he greets Greg quite familiarly. He's waiting for him to come out. He walks up, starts talking with him right away. He has really hefty binoculars here, and that seems to be one of his main tools of the trade, which, of course, in sniper teams, binoculars is one of your main tools of the trade. And also, he walked out of the building exactly 1 minute before Greg Nickel came out. So was that it? Was the duty post over at the same time? Everybody's been giving clearance to vacate, so these guys are in the same unit. Okay, guys, I guess it's all over here. Time to go home. Just remember to write everything down, because I'm sure the Secret Service is going to want to talk to you tomorrow at the latest, and the FBI and all that. So at any rate, I'm questioning maybe this is Sniper 2, and maybe he was in more of a spotter role, which would explain that Funkadoo spotting scopey thing, which would explain his big binoculars and all of that. So conclusions for today. Where are we going with this? First, Greg Nichols, his movements really need explanation. His movements, whereabouts, highly suspicious. We're going to need answers to all of them that are credible. What was Greg doing for those 2 interminable minutes between when the shots were fired and him finally coming out of Building 6? Which is another typo there. That's supposed to be BLDG6, not BDLDG6. And what was the other sniper doing? Like, what were they doing? Like, when everybody's like scrambling around, where is this guy? And they're alarmed enough that you have a state cop standing on a picnic table with his gun drawn, looking at the roof line. You finally have the beat cop, the patrol cop, who wheels up and scrambles around and finds him right away. You have people looking for him. There's radio chatter. It's a big deal. How is it possible that Greg didn't go, oh, it would be a great place to take a look at the roof? That second story place where I'm supposed to be posted. We're supposed to believe that somehow at 6:06 he left to go talk with a patrol guy, and it was just down there. And then while all this stuff is chattering and exploding on the airwaves, it didn't occur to him to go, maybe I should go back to my post and take a peek, And, or what was even the second sniper doing? Like, were they just like glued to the wrong window, like not looking out into the trees from their second floor, not going to another aspect to see if they could scan the roof line? It's just, this stinks to high heaven, everybody. This is just there's something really, really wrong with this. There's inept, but this ain't it. There's something else going on here. If Nickel was downstairs in Building 6, then who was manning his rifle? Because we just saw him come out with a big beefy rifle. What's going on with that rifle? Where was it set up? Which room was it in? Was it loaded? Did he just walk away and leave it there? So that seems a little, let's say, out of protocol. And the Butler DA, Richard Goldinger, now he has a story that's inconsistent with the local after-action report. It's inconsistent with where we saw Greg walk out of. It's inconsistent with everything. So one of these two things needs fixing. And so it's either Richard Goldinger's perception of what happened, or it's going to be the after-action report. One of these two things is wrong, guaranteed. Okay, not finally. One more thing is the idea is being floated that the local snipers, they had no view. They just had no view from their positions. That is absurd, clearly. The windows were already open. It's not like they didn't even have, they'd press up and they couldn't see out the windows. The windows were already cranked open and they opened to the right. So they would have had a clear view to the left because the windows cranked to the right. We've established that. Okay. And if removing the screens was an issue, well, it's a tube tab removal. It's a quick punch. It's a knife. The screens are not actually an impediment in this story. The fact that there were 3 open windows facing Trump is a problem. Okay. It needs to be explained. It needs to be explained in the context of exactly who was where and when, and where were their weapons and what were they doing. And on and on and on. We have questions. This is the weak point of the whole story right now, as far as I'm concerned, for them. And we need to know exactly where everybody was, of course, who was north of that AGR fence line, right, which separated the AGR complex to the north, all the buildings. Every law enforcement officer up there, every cell phone needs to be pinged, challenged, tracked. We need to know where everybody was, because this whole story, particularly on the west side, how did crooks slip through all those people? Because there was only 70 people over there, maybe 80. It should not have been that hard to keep track of every single one of them. But somehow, crooks slides off of a picnic table at either 602 or 605, depending on who we believe at this point in time, and goes from there and scrambles onto a roof. By the way, the place he scrambled on, he didn't look overly buff. The crook's little judgment didn't look like an Olympic gymnast, right? So getting from a AC unit onto the roof, which has got a metal gutter thing on there, it's just, and there's a pipe, and you got to grab it. You got a backpack, so you got to throw the backpack up there probably. You got to scrabble up there. It's just going to be awkward and noisy. Just the whole idea that like nobody saw that is just a little hard to take. It's implausible. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn now to the great rebalancing with my subscribers, and it's important. We've been having some really ripping good conversations over there. So if you want to know what's happening in the world and talk about it with other people who are not insane, come join the tribe. We'd love to have you. With that, thanks very much, everybody, and thanks for contributing to a citizen's investigation into the Trump assassination attempt.